Good morning, everyone. Really quickly, just wait one more minute and see how many other people chime in because we're only up to 28 and I'm expecting somewhere in the 30s. So one more minute and then we'll get underway. In the meantime, does everybody have the Canvas site up? We'll be going through the syllabus really quickly on that. We'll follow that with the project brief, and then I'll be doing some demonstrations and get you on your way to completing project one. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Oh, there's someone just chimed in. So my understanding, although it's kind of weird to look at a blank screen and talk, is that everybody has all their cameras on all at once, and there's going to be almost 40 of us from time to time in here. Then it slows things down, so it's perfectly fine if you have your cameras off. However, and I've been trying to mute people as they come in just so they don't accidentally say something that they would regret in front of everybody. But I believe the setting is that you can always unmute yourself if you need to sort of shout or say, hey, you know, Josh, can you slow down, or can you just repeat what you just said, or I didn't quite understand something. So feel free to do that and interrupt if you need to. Sometimes I notice the chat, and sometimes I just talk and talk and talk and completely ignore it somehow. So if you're asking something in chat and then I don't address it and I haven't noticed it, then again, just feel free to unmute and say, hey, Josh, sorry, this is so-and-so. I had a question for you in the chat. You haven't answered it yet. Okay. So with that, let's talk about the syllabus. Welcome to Introduction to Digital Media. I'm the instructor, Josh Vermillion. I'm an associate professor. I've taught here for the last 7 years. And I've been teaching digital design for quite a while, a lot longer than 7 years. But suffice to say, it's been a while since I've taught this course. And so I really looked at it critically, especially having to sort of do a crash course in 5 weeks. And so I think what that made me do is really sort of identify what are the most important things to actually do here. If you have to start cutting things back and making everything really count, then I think everything just gets stronger and better. So with that, I'm just going to share my screen and we'll talk about the syllabus. There's my desktop. Hopefully everybody can see my screen now. Everybody see my web browser with the course syllabus, hopefully? Sorry, I teach online all the time, but I'm used to like smaller classes and people actually talk. So hopefully that's what you're seeing, and not like my other, I have like 6 monitors here. So anyway, let's talk about the overview. This is basically the fundamentals, 5 different software programs. We're talking about Rhino and Revit. Those are 2 modeling softwares. Rhino is great at geometric modeling, drafting. It's sort of like if you combined AutoCAD and Maya. Whereas Revit is a building information modeling. So it's very much about wanting to know what construction materials you're using. And it's a lot of data entry on top of drawing and modeling. In addition to those 2 softwares, we'll be dealing with 3 Adobe Creative Cloud products: Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. Photoshop is for everything raster graphics or bit based, pixel based. Then Illustrator's for all the vector graphics, and then InDesign for layouts and graphic design. So those are the sort of 5 software programs we'll be covering. Specifically, so we're dealing more with just software here. You don't have to go to university to like learn a piece of software and understand what each button does. That's it's sort of beneath us here. You'll be learning that stuff by putting it to use during this sort of project-based learning. So we'll be doing a number of demo sessions, and that's fine. And I'll probably record a lot of the demo sessions in advance, post them on YouTube, and then there'll be things that you can do over the long weekend. I think what you understand is that there's a cadence to this course. Obviously, we're going to meet 3 days in a row in the middle of the week, and then we have long weekends, which is great. But what that means is that we can do a lot in 3 days, and then you have some breathing room and a lot of latitude to sort of finish things up over the weekends. And or to watch demonstrations and then be prepared to like put them to use later in the week. So that's what we'll do. And so anyway, overview, execution assignments. Yeah. You can read all this stuff. I'm going to read this at you for too long. And I always found that to be sort of an insult to my intelligence when people think they have to read things to me when they're right in front of me. But really quickly, just talk about the structure. We have 5 modules, and we meet for 5 weeks. Surprise! So what that means is that, roughly a module will correspond for a week. And so we'll start with drawing and modeling. We'll then do some detailing in Revit. Then we'll extract some drawings, which will involve those modeling programs, just extracting drawings from the models and then bring them into Illustrator and Photoshop for post-processing. And on and on and on, right? So what happens is that the things we start in week 1 that we model will then be carried on to the module 2. We'll do something else with it in module 2, and then we'll do something more with it in module 3, and then module 4, and then by module 5, you'll have a sort of nice body of work that you'll catalog and put into a quick portfolio. And so that'll be really easy for us to show what happened over the summer, and it'll get you started with producing really importantly, your portfolio. So you can see is that there is the week-to-week breakdown here, as well as the points distribution for each module, each assignment, basically each project. So project 1 will be 25 points, 2 will be 15. Third project and fourth projects will both be 25 points each, and then the final project, which is putting into the portfolio, will be 10 points. We do not have a final exam. This is all project-based learning, and so it's there's no like true or false, like design is good, true or false, that kind of stuff. It's little value. So let's see, learning outcomes, right? We're going to understand how to make digitally. We're not analog because, of course, everything's closed because of the pandemic. Otherwise, we'd be laser cutting and stuff like that. Draw and construct 3D objects in digital space. That's important. So we'll be doing drawing and modeling as a means to express ideas. Also to use those as a means to extract drawings and renderings and other sorts of visualizations. We'll talk about the drawing types: plan, section, axon, perspective. and be able to manipulate graphics two-dimensionally. That's why we're using Photoshop and Illustrator after the fact. Compose presentation boards and other graphic compositions like portfolio pages. And we'll talk about things like color, line weight, composition, scale, yeah. So all that stuff's here. And again, the learning outcomes are important. These are stuff that you can expect to better understand if you haven't already. Some of you are coming at this from different timelines. Some of you probably already taken a set of second-year courses, and some of you have not. And so, you know, if this is a one-size-fits-all approach. We'll just bombard you with a bunch of stuff to do, and at the end, you'll finally probably understand how much you've learned. So, required resources. There are no textbooks required for this course. You know, software. Guys, I'm on the mic. Software is it evolves and changes so quickly that there's hardly any point in writing a book about Revit or Rhino or Photoshop. However, we do want to make sure that you get all the software that you need. Autodesk makes Revit available for free. Every 12 to 14 months, it comes out with a new version. You can download that and get the license as long as you have a .edu address. Rhino, you have a 90-day free trial, but it's, you know, it's about just a slightly under $200 investment. It's a good investment. What you'll find is that Rhino is essential when it comes to doing things like pulling all your stuff out to laser cut it, CNC route it, 3D print it. And it's gives you a lot more flexibility when it comes to modeling geometry than Revit does. Guys, quiet. Then Adobe, Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. Unfortunately, Adobe Creative Cloud, Adobe, like a few years back, went from, you know, pay us $250 for the whole package once to just pay us $20 a month, and then you can just continue to upgrade your stuff, right? For better or worse. But if you go to the Adobe Creative Cloud page, just make sure that you get the package for students. I think at the moment they're offering a discount. I think it's roughly $20 a month to get a package that includes Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. It probably has more to it than that. But those are the three softwares that we'll be using for the next 5 weeks. And you'll be using them for the next 5-10 years with all of these. So just keep that in mind. Again, there's some costs, but think of it more as investments. You'll be using these in your schooling for the next however many years you're here in school, plus out in the real world. Attendance is important. I've talked to a few of you, you know, with a number of circumstances regarding summertime and pandemic and all that stuff. And so, you know, if I've made special accommodations for those sorts of things, and you're not here every day, understand that's fine. But I will say this, right? I'm not going to take attendance. I can't. There's too many of you. This is one of 3 courses that I'm teaching in the middle of the summertime. I'm teaching 12 credit hours of courses right now. So I'm not going to be your mothers and fathers trying to keep my eye on who's here and who's not. It'll become very apparent if you're not coming to class and you're not keeping up. You'll dig yourself into a deep hole and it's hard to climb out of, okay? So my advice is to come and be here every day on time. We're always talking about new things. We're also troubleshooting old things. And so with that said, as someone asked in the chat, I am, in fact, this is recording right now. So I will record every lecture and demonstration and then post those on YouTube and then post the links. You'll see those in the module page as we go. So that way, that's more of a, quiet. Sorry, kids making noise in the background. But so I have, where was I? So that's less so that you don't have to come to class, but more so that you can watch and rewatch if you need to back up on something that I did in a demonstration. Okay, so a number of these demonstrations I'll do in class, but I also, if you just want to watch to sort of understand, make sure that you understand conceptually and not have to follow along and then suddenly get lost, that's fine because you can always rewatch, okay? If you then need to go back through and double check some details of like where I got this button or what I type in for this command, okay? Let's see, perform assignments out of class. Yeah, digital submission of work. There's just a naming convention. Obviously, if everybody just names their file project 1 and then submits it, then I don't know whose is whose. It'll probably tell me that anyway, because it's Canvas and probably does at least that. But it'd be nice to sort of understand, you know, let's say last name, first name, and that's project 1, and you know, this is a ADD. It's AAD, not ADD. Sorry, I'll fix that typo at some point. You know, just some sort of naming convention so that things become a lot easier for me to grade and to make sure I know who to give feedback to. Okay. Digital notes. Just a quick disclaimer here. Sometimes bad things happen, right? Your computer crashes, you lose work, something wasn't backed up. I've seen it all, really. I honestly have. In 15 years of teaching, I've seen laptops get accidentally dropped onto the pavement and slam into pieces. If you name it, I've seen it. It's sort of like the dog eating homework sort of thing, but digital. To me, there's no excuse. Get used to habitually hitting Command S or Control S, depending on what operating system you're using, to save, save, save. You know, before doing something potentially destructive to the file you've been working on for the last 2 days, you know, save as to create a version. That way, a new version of it. That way, if you do something you mess up, you need to go back to the old version, right? You have another file. Back up regularly. That might involve a hard drive. That might involve a USB thumb drive, right? A zip drive, memory stick, or whatever you want to call it. Or it might just involve like just you sort of regularly backing things up on your Google Drive, your free Google Drive through university, which has no size limit, which is nice. Submission deadlines. Please turn things in on time. Late projects will then be counted down, right? So depending on how many days it's late, we'll start they'll be penalized with grade drop. So just, again, don't fall into a hole. You know, again, you know, hey, look, if there's a legitimate emergency of some sort, then, you know, communicate with me and we'll take care of it. But otherwise, you know, I don't just like to take late work. I like to sort of grade things and not have to, you know, go back when I'm trying to grade 3 and project 3 and then sort of say, okay, so who's resubmitted project 1? What? You know, I don't, it's really kind of a pain in the rear, okay? And honestly, again, you fall behind, it's really tough because the thing you do in project 1, the end point of project 1 is the start point of project 2. The end point of project 2 is the start point of project 3, okay? So don't fall behind. If you think you're falling behind, you need to communicate with me. We can schedule office hours, do some one-on-one to help get you back on track, okay? Troubleshoot or whatever it is. Let's see, evaluation criteria. I think that's fairly straightforward. So also with the grading, you know, what's A, excellence, and above average, average, below average, failing, okay? Honestly, if you try your best, you're gonna be somewhere in this cloud, okay? The A and B range. Honestly, I mean that. You know, we all learn at our own pace, and particularly when it comes to technology, which has sometimes a pretty steep learning curve, right? I say that, you know, what I would prefer is that, you know, here's what I would want. I would prefer somebody, you know, spinning their wheels and failing, and then coming in with a bunch of good questions, and then we help you get you over that speed bump in your learning, in your project, right? Rather than somebody who just sort of closes down because something didn't quite make sense, right? So the key thing is to fail early and fail often so that we can, again, take these sessions. You need 2.5 hours, 3 times a week. So, you know, there's gonna be plenty of opportunities to sort of troubleshoot things and do some in-course help sessions, okay? Which becomes in-class work time if you wanna work ahead. But also becomes a way to solve or answer any questions that pop up. That happens. It happens. Trust me. There's technical difficulties are going to happen. Okay. Special notes. I just said, you know, I can revise or change the content or the calendar. That's not to like sort of play around with and you know, play, you know, gotcha games with you or anything. You'll be notified well in advance, but it's more of being able to respond and have some flexibility in case we need to slow down in some way, or we can speed things up in certain topics, right? It's more of just monitoring the pace that you guys are working at and customizing the course towards that, okay? So again, it's not going to be something that's going to penalize you if I'm just going to move around the due dates for things willy-nilly, you know, for no reason. It's in fact, what will happen is if we change anything, it'll be for your benefit, okay? Public health directives, academic policies, all the boilerplate that the provost makes us put into these. And that's important stuff, but it's here. So you can always look at these, but you've probably seen these a number of different times. University policies, a lot of different services at your disposal, student services, activities, academic, yeah, okay. libraries, and things like that. So that's the syllabus in a nutshell. And at this point, I'm just going to quickly pause. Let anybody speak up. Feel free to get on the mic. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot. But it seems like you guys saw this because you guys are on the Zoom, in the Zoom meeting. So that's good. While I wait questions, I can't see the chat because let's see, because I'm sharing my screen. Let's see if I can pop that up. I don't see it. Chat. See if anyone's, yeah, okay. Just want to make sure I bring that chat box up. Okay, well, now then we'll get going. Okay, so I think in your view, this is a shorter list, but really I think, besides the syllabus, it's the modules that really count for something here. Okay, so, there's these first steps, meet your instructor and all that stuff, which they wanted me to put in. I didn't even care about that, whatever. But let's talk about module 1. So the modules are where the sort of meat and potatoes for the course are. So if let's say go to this page, module 1. So here's basically the project 1 brief. Okay? So this is what we're going to be doing, what the objectives are and why it's important, the schedule and the workflow for the next week or so, up until next Tuesday, so a week from today, as well as the parameters and the workflows, right? The steps, the instructions, and then a rubric, okay? So here, you'll be going to project 1 for the next week, and then, soon you'll be going to project 2 or module 2, and looking at that. So this is really the thing to keep your eye on, okay? So let's talk about this a little bit. We'll talk about this. But the other thing is on the schedule and workflow, right? Like today is Tuesday the 14th. No surprise, we're having an introduction to the course, talking about the syllabus, talking about the project 1. Eventually, I'll give a recorded software demonstration here. But at the end of this, in the course schedule, then I'll post a link to the YouTube video of the actual lecture or demonstration that was recorded for the day, right? So you can always come back here, let's say tomorrow or Thursday or Friday or Saturday, whenever you're working on this, and say, gosh, I can't remember how he, turned on his object snaps. He gave the lecture on Tuesday. Oh, there's the link to the lecture. I'm gonna go to YouTube. And what I typically do is I publish these things on YouTube, then I look at them really quickly, and in the comments, I'll add the time codes for here's where we talked about the syllabus. Just, click on this, at minute mark 5 minutes and 10 seconds in. Here's where I talked about object snaps. Here's where I talked about moving and rotating objects. Here's where I talked about, X, Y, and Z. So I try to break it down to you to make it a little more digestible, so you're not trying to just sort of drag through, an hour-long YouTube video, but that you can actually sort of dive into the part that you want, okay? So try to make this as good as possible for you. So let's talk about this in more detail now. I'm just going to zoom in on my screen. You might be looking at this on yours or just looking at it on mine. So project 1, drawing and modeling in Rhino. So we'll start with Rhino 3D. Like I said, if you need to get, if you're still waiting to purchase it or still waiting to get the license or you need to, it's a cost. So, you need to save up some money for it or, wait till next month's paycheck or whatever it is. That's fine. You can get a 90-day free trial with a email address. So I assume that's what it says. So and usually that's what people do in these courses. So to start off with, if you need to, you have there's no grace period for we're just going to dive right in and just put these tools to work. So beginning with careful reading of the instructions provided herein, you will engage in an introductory exercise of model making and spatial organization. I think that's really the key. We're going to be doing some stuff, drawing and modeling in Rhino. But the key thing is that, keep your eye on the big prize. The skill building is important, but it's a means to an end. And the end is really sort of how do we begin to create space, define space, and make something formally and spatially interesting. And so we'll be composing a bunch of planar components for this first assignment. In order to do that, let's see, carefully draft model planar components, assemble them in a provocative and interesting surface composition, right? You've already heard the word composition. We're talking about visual or spatial composition. It's not like a like a word composition, like you would type out for, let's say, your English class. We mean a three-dimensional composition of components, right? A whole that's created by a set of parts. Okay, so we're going to generate unique spatial conditions that vary in terms of density, light, or size. So we will develop a spatial intelligence, visual thinking skills. We'll do that skill building with drafting conventions, dimensions, scale, the drawing and modeling basics in Rhino. Let's see, decision-making skills, translating form between two-dimensional and three-dimensional pieces. So, all right, hopefully that's straightforward. There's a little bit of boilerplate here about what Rhino is. Yeah. The learning objectives, again, are kind of a rehash before, but let's talk about this because, this is really what I want you to get out of this, partially anyway. So we're going to learn how to draw and draft and make two-dimensional stuff. And then talk about some common surfacing methods like extrude, filling in planar surfaces, offsetting, those sorts of surfacing commands and methods. Geometric manipulation transformations like move, copy, rotate, scale, mirror, those sorts of things. Utilize all those basics like managing things on different drawing layers, turning on and off snaps and orthographic constraints, using the multiple orthographic viewports to your advantage. So learning a little bit about the interface. Model a complex spatial structure from simple parts. Well, that makes sense. And then generating a quick isometric drawing of the resulting model that you create. So at the end, we'll always have some sort of drawing outcome or output that you submit. Okay. In this case, it'll be an isometric drawing. So here's how I see the schedule working. Today, we're going to do, well, what we just said. So once we're done here, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll let you guys take a 5-minute break after we talk about the project. I'll get a glass of water, and then we'll come back, and I'll do a demonstration for the workflow that's suggested for you guys. And again, that lecture recording will be uploaded, made available. Actually, this sentence will be replaced with, see the lecture here, on this YouTube link or whatever. Okay. Wednesday, 15th of July. So tomorrow, work time outside class. We will not meet tomorrow. This is one of the rare times where we won't meet. I want you to just have time. I want you to be busy. And in fact, if you want to just do it during the course time, where normally we would meet, but I want you to try to do the assignment as much as possible. And then that way on Thursday, you come prepared with any kinds of questions, concerns, problems, and challenges you found as you went through this. Thursday is really important, because then I set you loose until the next Tuesday, right? So you have a lot of time, but I don't want you to be spinning your wheels that whole time. I want to make sure that you all are going in the right direction and that you can successfully complete the project over the weekend, okay? So we'll use the beginning of Thursday's class to follow up on your Wednesday work session by yourselves, to do any troubleshooting, any further demonstrations needed to clarify project 1. And then we'll focus on, and I'll talk about the beginning of project 2, because there'll be a little bit of overlap between project 1 and project 2 over the weekend, okay? Won't be too overwhelming, but there'll be stuff that you need to do, and so we'll get you going with that over the weekend as well, okay? Then a week from today, on Tuesday, it's 21st of July, your project 1 will be due. It'll be an isometric drawing of the model that you compose out of the things that you draw and then model, okay? So let's talk a little bit more about what you're drawing and modeling, shall we? Project 1, parameters and workflow. Number 1, we'll talk about this, and again, I'm going to go through these step by step in just a bit. And again, that'll be recording for you. But project 1, parameters workflow. First, you're going to set your units in Rhino to feet. You're going to draw 40 by 40 foot squares. Okay, so we'll start with 2 dimensions. So we'll start to draw things. You're going to take 4 of these 40 by 40 squares, and you're going to start to draw the stuff inside, right? Okay, and so you provided these templates that you just need to sort of like, again, sort of make something that's 4 feet in, and then goes, let's see, 32 feet this direction, and then 26 feet in that direction, okay? And on and on and on, right? What you're doing is you're taking something like a 40 foot by 40 foot square, and you're subdividing it into pieces. And then you're taking some of those pieces and further subdividing them. This piece gets cut into 2 additional pieces. This piece gets cut into 3. This piece gets into 4, okay? And on and on and on. Eventually, you end up with 15 unique parts, okay? A component catalog, so to say. We will then extrude them into solids to give them thickness, so they're not paper thin. But let's say they're about a foot in depth. And then you can reassemble the parts in order to create a set of, or create a sort of spatial composition out of planes, okay? And so there's a set of parameters here, right? You reassemble at least 12 of the components that you just drew and modeled into and arrange them within a 60 foot by 60 foot by 60 foot sort of envelope, cubic envelope. So at least 3 edges need to be defined. You need to have some parts of one or more of these components go out to at least 3 of the edges of this imagined cube. And then you need to create at least 3 distinct spaces, you know, in this composition. And that's easy. You know, there's one here, there's one here, there's one here. What I think you hopefully understand is that you don't necessarily need to create spaces by just sort of making a closed room and then punching a hole through it for the door, okay? But that you can begin to sort of understand and achieve spaces that flow into each other and sort of understand that there are certain interlocking of spaces that can occur, right? And that, again, if you have a sort of variable, how do I say this? Maybe a variation in the sort of set of volumes that are defined by these planar components, then you actually get some really kind of interesting things that we'll cut in section and plan and look at in perspective later on in the semester, okay? So find the most interesting isometric view then and make 2D and create a flattened drawing and export to Illustrator to PDF. So you'll be rotating this, looking around at it and sort of understanding what's the most interesting view that you're going to make an isometric drawing of. Okay. So let's talk about quickly how we'll assess these, you know, the sort of criteria by which you can sort of say, okay, I'm done, this is really successful, or maybe I need to work on this when I turn it over, right? We're talking about spatial variety. So investigate and create a variety of volumes and interlocking spaces, which I just talked about, right? So the interesting thing is if you have, again, if you're looking at this and you say, okay, I don't just want a bunch of set of rooms, right? But I want it like a sort of set of interlocking volumes, okay? Created by a set of interlocking planes. Formal interest, right? So the shape of things, the formal, right? The overall form created. Do not think in terms of front or back or top or bottom, but rather your model planar composition should be interesting from all sides. So if I took this digital model of yours and turned it over and spun it around and everything else, it shouldn't be obvious like which one's the bottom, which part's the bottom, which part's the back that I should never see, right? Every side should be interesting. And so that might help you sort of push, pull, arrange, slide, move, copy, or whatever, in order to continue to further compose these set of components into a system, okay? And then last, just simply following the instructions. So, you know, making sure that you read the instructions carefully and that you follow them, you know, and that you meet the parameters and say 60 by 60 by 60 cube. If this thing looks like a flat pancake and it's way outside of 60 by 60 feet, then, you know, then clearly you didn't read very thoroughly. You know, if it's just one big volume and you just made everything on the outside, then, you know, again, that's not going to create 3 distinct spaces. If, you know, you have like curves, that's not part of the requirements. Remember we said, it says here, you know, no curved cuts, right? And so again, look at these carefully, right? I try to, you know, break it down in a very reductive way. So you can just say step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Just follow the steps. The key thing is that you don't have necessarily you don't necessarily have the end goal in mind, but really the sort of the overall model emerges as you begin to this exercise of how to compose planes in some sort of way. Okay. So I have a question for Maria. Will we have classes in person? Yes, most of the time we'll have classes in person over Zoom. No, not in person, over Zoom. Campus isn't even open yet. So yeah, we'll be doing Zoom classes. Did that solve your, did that answer your question, Maria? Is that what you were asking? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and honestly, I mean, the last thing I want is to go into a classroom and touch a public computer that everybody else has touched, and those keyboards are petri dishes. and then you have a question, and I have to like hover over your shoulder. No. So we'll try our best to do everything virtually, and this is probably one of those classes where that could actually work better than meeting in person. It's not all classes are like that, of course, but this one will. Yeah, great. Glad I answered your question, Maria. Good question. Any other questions?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So in terms of drawing the shapes on the two-dimensional squares, are we drawing our own shapes with the respected dimensions, or can we draw it with our own dimensions?
You'll start by drawing, like on step 3, you'll start by following these dimensions.
Okay.
Okay, so you'll have a set of shapes that look like this at the beginning of step 4.
Okay.
The shaded areas, then you can pick where you cut panel A into 2 additional pieces, where you cut panel B into 3 additional pieces. So yes and no, right? No and then yes, I guess. Does that help? And what I'll do,
sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, so we're basically making the shapes in like the shaded. We're making the shaded shapes as you have them, correct? The very first step. Okay.
Yeah. Then the next step, where you cut them into 2 additional pieces, that's for you to decide where you would cut, right? It could be in this direction, right? Or it could be here instead of down here, or okay.
Okay, thank you.
Will the ISO be 30-30? Yes, the ISO will be 30-30. I'll actually show you in this demonstration how you set that in Rhino. Okay, there's a very particular way you do that. Okay, so are we all going to have the same shapes and sizes? So you'll all have the same. You'll all have these shapes, the same shapes here, and then you'll choose where you cut 2, 3, and 4, 5 additional pieces. So your overall component catalog might look a little different, although you're all starting with the same sort of language, right? The sort of same, these are all results from the same steps that you're doing up here, okay? Then you'll extrude them, right? Then you'll create these. So you can see here, right? These all have these were physical models done in foam core, using the exact same instructions and ingredients, right? They're all different, although they all have a similarity in the sort of the language used, and that they're planar shapes. Everything's orthogonal. Everything's cut to 90 degrees. Everything's put together in 90-degree increments. Okay, and so there's a similarity, and yet each one is unique. Okay, so you can think of it in that way. So with that, I say let's take 5 minutes. It's 11. I'll say for all practical purposes, 11:40. Let's start again at 11:45. Take a quick break. If you need to run to the restroom or grab a snack or a drink of water, that's fine. But what I'll do is I'll open up Rhino, and I'll actually go through the instructions here step by step as a demonstration. Okay, and again, that will be recorded, and then I'll post it to YouTube. I'll post the link to it on the course module page, right? So when you go to this, you'll go, okay, Tuesday. Oh, there's the lecture from Tuesday. There's the link, and you can go to it and rewatch if you need to, or rewind it to the right spot where okay. All right, so let's take 5. So while we're breaking, Miriam, I saw your question. To recap, yeah. So in step 3, you're literally drawing the templates, right? That's why I gave you dimensions. Then in step 4, I'm just saying divide panel A into 2 parts. I'm not specifying where. Okay. And panel 3 into the 3 parts, and panel C into 4 parts, etc. So I think, yeah, exactly the way you described it. I think you've nailed it. The nail on the head. All right, so I'll mute and give you guys another 2 minutes or so break here. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Miles, I saw your question. Appears that there's no submit button for module 1 on Canvas. I'm curious that this is online class only. This is an online class only. How are we supposed to submit our work? So I have an assignment, project 1, set up, but for some reason it shows that assignments are not visible to students. That's not helpful. So I'll try to get that. This is the first time using Canvas. Usually I just use a couple of WordPress blogs and Google Docs and Google Forms, but I'll figure that out. So I think but it should just be, you know, just it'll actually have a place for you to upload your PDF, right? So I'll try to get that worked out between now and Tuesday. Not a big deal, but thanks for letting me know that that's not available to you. It's what I view and what the student view is a little different here. So I'm going to make sure that works. Appears there's no submit button for module 1 on Canvas. Yeah, so I will, should be an assignment, I believe. That's how I collect things. Project 1. Let me go to view course. Let's go to student view really quickly. Sorry, let me share my screen here too. So I don't know if you guys can see my screen at the moment. I have my browser up. When I go to, this is student view, at least that's what it tells me what you'd see. When I go to home, there is project 1. For some reason, assignments isn't over here on the left, and I'm going to change that so you guys see those. But project 1 is worth 100 points. Submit a file for upload, file types PDF. You can submit your assignment here, choose your assignment, okay? I don't know why it's only showing it here on the home page right here for to do. But that's the way it is right now. I'm going to work on I'll just ask the online folks if they can just figure out how to put it right here. I'm not sure why that's the case. The other thing I can do is I can go back in and edit the module, and at the very end say submit assignment, and I can just push that link, so that maybe you can link to it from there. Okay. So thanks for bringing that up. And let's see. And someone's asking if we're going to meet in person as well. No, we're not meeting in person at all. This is the campus isn't even opened, and this is a remote online course. In fact, I've actually been trying to get people to put this course online for a while. Yeah, we're not meeting in class at all, so or in person or anything. You're not required to come campus. Any other questions before we move on to Rhino? Oh, yeah, okay.
So
yeah.
I just have one question.
Sure.
For this project, do you want us to create just one composition of the shapes, or are we doing 6 like in the example? 6
no, you're doing 1. These are 6 different examples.
Great. Great.
Yeah, just
okay,
1.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Good questions. Okay, well, like I said, just shout at me if you need to. Particularly if you post a question, a timely question in chat, and I don't see it because I'm looking at 6 different screens. Then feel free to just sort of unmute and pause me for a minute. Okay, just shout at me. You don't have to scream, but shout. Shouting's fine. Okay, so we'll just go through this step by step. Okay, first thing, Rhino. I'm just opening this up. Yours might look different. I've set my background to be white instead of the gray. I've turned the grid off because I don't like it. It's just visually distracting, particularly when I'm trying to show things on the screen. But all in all, this should be the exact same. So one thing we need to do is we need to set our units. That's something that you just need to get in the habit of doing. So that's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to go to some of the settings. And this is where most of Rhino settings are if you're using the Windows version. You go to Tools, pull down, and go to Options down at the bottom of that pull down. Okay. Leave my cursor there for a moment. If you write something down where the settings are, Tools, pull down, Options. And that'll bring up a settings box. And there's lots of things in here. Here's how I turned off my grid. I went to the grid settings and unchecked the show grid lines. And on and on and on. But what I can do is go to units, and I can make sure that those are set to feet. Okay. Also with distance display, you can do decimal if you prefer. I prefer feet and inches. Sometimes I want to say like, hey, this is going to be 8 foot 4 inches. I don't want to say 8 foot 0.33 feet or something like that. That would just be weird. Okay. So in the imperial system, we have, things aren't necessarily always divisible by 12 really easily in my head. So feet and inches work well. Okay. So this is what I'm using right now, feet, and then distance display, and I'm saying feet and inches. I'm hitting OK. Right. So we've set units. That's really important. We typically draw and model things at full scale, right? Then if we need to extract, let's say, an 8 scale drawing, then we can extract the drawing and make sure it's scaled to 8 scale correctly. Okay. Typically, we just draw something that's 40 feet. We draw 40 feet in the modeling space itself. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the toolbar. The toolbar over here. There is a method to how the toolbar is laid out. There's a hierarchy to this, right? So of course we have our cursor tool, but we have points, then we have curves, then we have surfaces and meshes, And then we have all the tools that we can do with the ingredients once we've modeled them, right? So we use points to make lines and curves, right? Inherently, if I want to draw a line, I start with a start point and then an end point, right? And then the line is drawn as the shortest distance between those 2 points, right? So we use lines and curves to make surfaces and meshes, right? And then once we have those sorts of things, we can trim and join, split, explode, move, rotate, copy, scale, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, there's lots and lots of tools. Each of these tools actually, has a triangle, meaning if you click and hold, that there's even more tools embedded underneath, right? Okay. Fortunately, there's also a command line here at the top. You can see there's my cursor, command. So it's asking me, okay, what do you want to do? So for all of these commands that I can hit a toolbar button for, I can also just type in the command in the command line, similar to AutoCAD. And so, if I wanted to draw a line or a polyline, right, I can click this button that says polyline, or I can just type in polyline into the command line and just start drawing away. So that's something I could be doing with my left hand while my right hand is on the mouse. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to start by clicking on a point. Let's draw a line. I'm going to draw a 40-foot long line. Okay. And so now it wants me to draw the end or click on the end point. I can actually type in 40 and then the tick mark for feet, right? Now it's only going to let me draw a 40-foot line. Okay. And now I want to actually just draw, let's say, in the x-axis. Okay. So another thing, I want to constrain these to, let's say, 90-degree increments. I can turn my ortho on down here on the right, or down here at the bottom. Not the right, the bottom. So at the bottom, I have a couple of options here that I can toggle on and off. And one of them is ortho. What happens when I toggle ortho on? I can only draw on the x or y axis. Okay. So I can click. Now I have a 40-foot line going from left to right. Okay. Now it's asking me, okay, which direction do you want to draw? I can click my mouse button, or I can type in 40 with a tick mark for feet. Okay. Now I'm going to draw a 40-foot line. Now I just have to tell which direction. Okay. 40 feet. I'm entering that into command line, hitting enter. Now I can only draw a 40-foot line. It's just a matter of clicking which direction I want. Okay. Now I could type in 40 feet and just click down. Or let's say I just want to make sure that I click directly on that starting point. I'm going to turn on my object snaps. Okay, that's another option I have down there at the bottom. Okay, so I've toggled on ortho, so I can only draw in 90-degree increments. And now I've also toggled on object snaps. I can make sure that I snap to endpoints. And now it'll actually find when I get close to that endpoint, it'll snap to that endpoint and I can click and close the shape. Okay, so I'm going to draw another 40-foot box. I'll start again. Polyline, start point. Okay. Remember, if I don't have my ortho on, I can draw in any direction I want. I'm going to turn my ortho on since I'm just drawing squares. I'm going to type in 40 feet into the command line, just using my keyboard, hit enter, click when I want to, place that endpoint. 40 feet, click, 40 feet, click, snap back to the start point. Okay. Now, you'll do this over and over again a couple of times in order to practice and just develop the muscle memory. What you'll find is that when you right-click, it's like hitting the enter button. When you right-click and you don't have a command going, but you right-click, then it repeats the last command, okay, which is really handy. So let's say I want to draw another polyline. I just right-click again. I don't have to go all the way back to this toolbar button. Right-click again, 40 feet, click, 40 feet, click, 40 feet, click, snap to that endpoint, click. Okay. Right-click to start again. 40 feet. Okay. So it just takes practice. Okay. Practice, practice, practice. And you eventually develop a muscle memory. You don't even realize half the things you're doing. It's like driving, right? Your feet move, your arms move, right? You don't really have to think too hard about it as you do it once you have a little bit of practice at it. Okay, so I have 4 starting ingredients, these 40-foot by 40-foot boxes. I'm just going to move them down here. Okay. the next steps. I need to, sorry, I'll just zoom in here. Draw these templates inside, right? So I need to make sure that I have actually these shapes, right? And I want both the inside and the outside shapes, right? So that's important to remember. So let's see, I'm gonna drag this over so I can see it, kind of, hopefully. Seriously, Windows, there we go. There's that first shape. I'm gonna drag this and size it a little differently so I can see what I'm drawing over here and the dimensions that I need. And I can see, you know, what I'm drawing here in Rhino. Okay, so I have an edge here that starts at 4 feet down from the top. It's going to be 6 feet thick, and then 4 feet thick as it goes down all the way to the bottom. All right. Whew. So there's a couple of different ways you can approach this. Okay. One way is to start to draw, like let's say I'm going to draw this shape. And so I'm going to start down here and I'm going to snap to that bottom corner, right? Because that's an endpoint. And I'm just going to draw upwards. And I'm going to draw a 36 feet line, right? So 30 plus 6, right? So 36 feet to get to there. So I'm going to say 36 and click. Then I need to draw, let's see, 4 feet plus 24 feet. That's 28 feet. So 28, tick, mark for feet. There we are, click. Then I know that this is 6 feet. So I'll type in 6 feet. And then 24 feet. And then that's 30 feet. And then I can snap back to that start point again, right? Now I have a closed shape there. Everybody see that? So I can select this shape. You can see that it's all highlighted in red. Okay. Now I still have the outside shape is still just the square, and I've drawn this thing inside of it. Probably the quickest thing I can do at this point is just use my snaps and draw that other shape, this sort of the yin to the yang. So I'm just gonna go around and snap to the endpoints here. And just redraw that outside shape, okay? Now, what's interesting is I have 2 shapes here. I have the original square, and I have just that new shape that I made, right? And so when I click on something and Rhino is not quite sure like what I'm trying to select because their 2 things are close together or overlapping, it gives me this option, the selection menu. So I'm going to select this first curve, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete it, right? So now I'll just pull this away. I have both of these shapes, right? I have this one and this one, right? I'm going to go ahead and move them back so that they're together again. But I have this shape, and I have this shape now, okay? So let's try that again, right? This is a demonstration. You'll continue to rewatch this if you need to. Okay, so I need to basically take this dumb box and I need to make this shape out of it, right? Sort of a backward C shape. Okay, so I'm going to start here at this top left corner. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a new polyline. I'll snap to that top left corner. You can see that there's different snap points that you can do, like intersections or center points or midpoints. I'm going to turn intersect off. I'm just going to leave endpoints on. I'm going to go ahead and just snap to the end. And I'm going to go to the edge here and all the way to this corner. Now I know that this is going to be 8 feet plus 20 feet, so 28 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 28. Okay, and then 10 feet up. So 10, right, and 20 feet. Okay, so once you get the hang of this, hopefully it's not too bad. I mean, actually, it comes actually quite fast and easy. That's the hope anyway. So this will be 20 feet plus 12 feet, so 32 feet. And then close it up, right? So there's the first shape. And I can just go back and quickly, it's quicker than trimming all this stuff out. I can just go ahead and just make the other shape here. You know, everything's already drawn for me, so I just snap to the right places and call it a day. And I'm just gonna delete that original outside box. I don't need it anymore. It's almost just like construction geometry. I would just erase if I was doing this with a drafting table and a square. All right. So really quickly, I'll just draw this. Why not? Well, this is interesting, right? So there's a couple different ways you could do this. I could draw, like, let's say just a light construction line here and a light construction line here at this edge. And then I could move these up, let's say 10 feet up, and then move this one 16 feet over, right? Why don't I try that? So I'm gonna go ahead and, if I wanna move something, guess what I do? I type in move into the command line, and that's the command to move. So I can select this to move. I'll select it and hit enter. Then the point to move from, and I'm gonna go ahead and click on my screen. Now I can move at any distance, but if I wanna specify exactly 16 feet, like my template, I can type in 16 feet, and I can move it just 16 feet. Okay, and I'll just pick this side and click. Same with this one. So what I'm trying to do is just identify this bottom left corner of this inside shape. So I'm going to move this edge 16 feet over. I'll move this edge 10 feet up. Okay, type in move. Make sure I type in 10 feet. Okay, now let's say I want to make the top and the right edge. I can copy these, right? So I can say type in copy, select the object copy, and copy and move are kind of the same. So I'm going to move this 20 feet up. And I'll move this one 16 feet over. So I'll type in 16 feet. Right? And now I just need a trim. I'm going to go ahead and use the trim tool. Okay. I'm sort of going over and just sort of highlighting where the button is, but honestly, trim, I just type in trim. And then I can say select the cutting objects. So I'm just select all of these lines that I drew. Okay, and right click once I'm done selecting. Then I say select the object to trim. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the parts of the objects that I want to trim away and delete. So if I accidentally selected here, I would trim that part away, but I want to select the outsides. So I'm going to select all of this. Right, all these things intersect each other, so I can select all the parts there like that. Okay. Again, I'll just undo and show you again. Okay. I'll type in trim. I'm going to select all of these as cutting objects, right? So this line cuts through this line. So now if I selected that, then I would actually delete that away. That's not what I want to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the portions that I want to trim away. Okay. And right click and press enter on my keyboard when I'm done. All right. The other thing is that these are now 4 distinct lines. They're not a polyline. You remember when we were drawing a polyline and we close it up, I can select one edge and it selects the whole shape. Here, when I select one of the sides, it doesn't. It just selects one of the sides at a time. Okay. What I need to do is join this together into a closed polyline, right? A closed poly shape. I can select them all at once, and then to join them together, I just type in the join command. So type in join, and in the command it tells me, okay, 4 curves have been joined into one closed curve, right? That's helpful to know. Let me just undo again. If I type in join, it's going to always at the command line when I type in or just select one of these toolbar buttons, you know, to run a command, it's going to ask me for like the ingredients and so, you know, for instance, select objects to join. It needs some curves to join, so I can select these. Right. Once I'm done, it says, "Oh, 4 curves joined into one closed curve. Congratulations." It doesn't say congratulations. That's just, you know, we just accomplished something. So, all right. Let's see. Last but not least, let's just quickly do this one. So again, I'm just following this template exactly. Okay, and that's why I put these dimensions on for you so that you can follow them exactly. Okay. Let's say I'm just going to draw. Oh, here we go. I'm just going to draw this shape, the U, and then I'll be able to draw this box really quickly. So I'm just going to start this top left corner and then go all the way around. And then just make this 30 feet long and 32 feet tall, 4 feet over. Again, I have my ortho on, so I can draw only in 90-degree increments. 32 feet back up, and then snap right there. Okay, and I can delete that original outline and polyline. I just click, 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 make that smaller shape. All right, see now I have that shape versus this shape. Okay, great. Okay, now it's time to move on to the next step. I'm just gonna expand this window. All right, some of you might be following along and actually be close to being done. Who knows, I don't know. But I did want to sort of go through this step by step with you guys, okay? In particular, I want to make this as productive as possible so you can really like, hopefully get as far along as you can tomorrow. Okay. So panel A, cut into 2 pieces. Panel B, cut into 3 additional pieces, 4, 5. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to take some of these pieces and I need to start to trim and cut them up in different ways, right? So splitting them up and things like that. How did you delete the original outline? I selected it and I just hit my delete or backspace key. Okay, so you select something. I just hit my delete key on my Mac keyboard. On a PC keyboard, you might actually have a delete button that's different than the backspace button. Okay. But you just use the keyboard to delete. Good question. Okay, and like I said, once you have, the interesting thing is, let me just draw that outline just so we have it. You know, I have this shape that I made plus the outline, and so when I try to click one versus the other, right, it's going to ask me like which one do I want. So just make sure you're selecting the right one to delete away. Are there keyboard shortcuts for the commands? Yes and no. You can actually program those in the settings, like AutoCAD, like a C for copy and TR for trim and things like that. What it does is that it IntelliSenses in the command line. So as I start to type in poly, like POL, then it says, okay, polyline, polygon, poly, okay. But what it does is it remembers the things that you've used the most recently, and so it'll guess polyline first, okay. So if you start typing in trim, it'll guess trim. If you start typing in CO for copy, it'll guess copy first, okay. So yes and no. Yeah. There are ways to set more keyboard shortcuts, particularly if you're used to, let's say AutoCAD, where, like I used to a long time ago. So thanks. I hope that's helpful. Those are good questions. You guys have great questions. So, keep them up. I'd much rather answer really smart questions than just sit here and listen to myself all day. Okay, but needless to say, we need to move on. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a copy of these, and I'm going to start trimming the copies just in case I need to take back a step. I mess something up. Does that make sense? I try to do that when I'm thinking about it and I remember. Okay, so I'm going to type in copy. How do you pan and zoom? Oh, excellent question, Miles. Okay, so if you have a 2-button mouse, like a left and right click, when you're in the orthogonal views, right, the right click pans, okay? And then if you have a scroll button, you can zoom in and out with the scroll button. Now, there are other ways you can just use that right mouse button. So if I hold down the shift key and use the right mouse button, it still pans. If I hold down I think it's the control key on mine and use the right mouse button, I can zoom in and out if I don't have a middle mouse button or a scroll button. And then command, yeah, okay. So there we go. In the perspective or parallel or other three-dimensional views, I'll just turn this to perspective real quick. Right? In those viewports, when I right-click, I tumble or dolly or rotate my view. If I hold down the shift key and right-click, then it pans. And again, if I hold down the control and right-click, it zooms in and out. Okay. So that's really great question. I'm not going to pretend it's the most intuitive thing. I came from a time where sometimes we did some things in DOS, so this was great when, it reminds me a lot of how Maya works, like back in the day before Rhino became a really sort of inexpensive Maya alternative. But a little bit of muscle memory, and you begin to actually remember without really thinking about it, okay? That's a great question. So I'm using right click in zoom. And what I'm doing is I'm toggling back and forth between viewports. If I want to maximize one of my viewports, I double click on the label. When I want to go back to 4 viewports, I can double click on the label again, and I can look at a different one, double click it, right? If I start to move things, let's say I have something in plan view or top view and I want to move it in elevation, I can then, you know, move it in side view and see it move all at the same time in all my viewports and things like that, okay? I'm not going to move anything at the moment. But back to the task at hand, I am going to make a copy of these before I start to split things up, right? That's really important because I'm going to type in copy. You know, I'm trying all of this stuff from scratch and brand new. And so, you know, I'm going to, before I start to trim and potentially do something destructive to these, I'm going to make a copy of them in case I need to go back to the originals, okay? And I'll go ahead and take these smaller shapes. I'm just going to divide these things up. So I divide this one up, I think it says 2 times, divide this one up 3 times, this one up 4 times, this one up 2 times. Okay, so one of the first things I'm going to do is just draw, again, some polylines or some lines. I'm just going to make a judgment call on where I'm going to cut these, you know. I'll cut one there, and I'll cut one here. So I'll use this to cut this into 1, 2, 3 pieces, this one into 1, 2 pieces, this one into 1, 2, oh, well, let's see. Yeah, maybe I'll cut this one here too. So 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, and then this one into 2. I'll just do something like this. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these to sort of split these objects up. Okay. That's key. Another key word, split. Again, when I post this to YouTube, I'll go through and try to time code all of these for you. So you're like, okay, how did he do this? Oh, there's a, you know, you can look at the comments and go like, oh, he did split at 23 minutes and 26 seconds in, and just click on it and I'll take you right there, okay? But, I'm just gonna type in the command split. It says select the object to split, so I'm gonna go ahead and select this, outline, and right click once I'm done, and then say select the cutting object. So I'm gonna go ahead and select this line that I just drew, right? And this curve has now been split into 2. I can go ahead and delete that split cutter line that I made. And I'm just going to, again, I'm just going to make a polyline. I'm going to snap and close these back up. Okay. And then again, I want to make sure that these are all closed. Right now I have this and then I have this edge, right? I can select all these at once and just hit join or type in join, right? And it says 4 curves are joined into 2 closed curves. So it did all of this at once. It closed all of these up into a closed curve and closed all of these up into a closed curve, right? Just one command, okay? So I'm gonna do that again, split. I'll select this object and I'm gonna split this thing. I'm gonna use these to split it up. All right, okay, I'll go ahead and get rid of these objects. Just move these away so you can, I'll prove that they were actually split, right? And now I know exactly where I need to close up those seams. There we go. Just make sure I actually snap here. Snap, click, 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 click. Right click when I'm done each time, right to end the command. I'll select all of these at once and hit join or type in join. Try to spell join correctly. Oh, really? There we go. 8 curves joined into 3 closed curves, right? So it closed all of these up. Each of these now are closed curves. Okay, one more time, split. I'm gonna split both of these with all of these. Okay. I'll go ahead and just delete these things. And I'm just going to move these away. You'll notice sometimes when I just select things, the gum pops up and I can just quickly, if I'm feeling very adventurous, I can just move things just, you know, without any precision with the gumball tool, right? Those arrows that pop up. I'm just gonna go ahead and close these up one side at a time, right? I'm not saying that this is always the quickest way to do this, but I do want you to practice drafting anyway. So this is a perfect way to do that. Okay. Go ahead and select all of these, type in join. Now you can close into forward, closed curves. Okay. One last time, I'll do another split. Select this to split it with. Go ahead and delete that splitting part. Just move this away in Gumball so you can see it. Now, close these up with some line segments. And then make sure that they're joined together. Type in join. Close curves. Okay. All right. And now I deleted these other shorter, smaller pieces away, but I need to select those and I'll make a copy of them down here along with them, right? So now here are my component parts, right? These are what I'm going to actually, use, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There should be 15 of them. And voila, there are. Okay, so there's my 15 parts. So that's drawing with measurements, using the ortho, using the object snaps, using some trimming and splitting, using some joining, doing some moves and some copies. Okay, it's a lot to absorb if this is the very first time you've done this stuff. I understand that. That's why I'm recording this. So you can go back through and rewatch it and then do it on your own step by step, where you can watch and pause and then do it yourself and then keep watching and pause again and do it yourself, right? You can sort of do this incrementally on your own tomorrow, okay? But at this point, I'm just gonna ask if there are any quick questions before I move on to the next steps for the demonstration, okay? So take 30 seconds or so, do some stretches, unmute your mic if you have any quick questions, and fire away, and then if not, we'll just move forward, okay? Okay, so let's just move on. The next steps, how do you change it to white and remove the grid? Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. Back to the tools, options, right? So you'll find pretty much every option that's for Rhino, you can, I mean, there's more here than you can shake a stick at, is in the tools pull down options, okay? Tools pull down options, just like where we set the units, you can go to grid and they can turn the grid off if you want, right? There it is on, there it is off. Let's see, appearance maybe, colors. There's background color, so you can change the background color. You can change the selection color, right? So right now I have that set to like a red, so that when I select things, they turn red. Yours might be yellow against a gray background. It's up to you, right? What you're looking for is contrast, depending on how you're drawing and what you're selecting versus the background color. It's a great question, right? Tools, pull down, options. How would you unclose an object? Another great question. Thanks, Joseph. Let's say I went to, right now, this is like, let's say a closed object, a joined object. How do I unclose? I can explode it, okay? Just like there's a join command with two puzzle pieces joined together, there's something that looks like an explosion, that's the explode. I can just type it in to explode. I explode it. Oh, let me actually type it in without the typo. And I can select this, and now it's exploded into its own, each edge of the polyline is now its own separate line segment, okay? Great questions, guys. Great questions. So just like there's a join, there's an explode, right? Those are the two opposites. Should we be making our shape 60 feet? No. So what happens is, the way I recommend going about that, Kaylee, in just a second I'll show you. But what you want to imagine is a 60 foot by 60 foot by 60 foot cube that you're working within, okay? And so, yeah, I would actually model that, and I'll show you how in just a minute. So you're skipping ahead, but that's a great question. So why don't first of all, what we need to do, these are just curves, right? These are just lines, like polylines. We need to actually make these into surfaces and then actually give them some thickness, okay? So we'll do that. And then we need to model that 60 foot by 60 foot by 60 foot sort of cubic envelope that we're going to work within, right? And then the last step is to sort of move and rotate things away and put things and compose them inside that 60 volume. We're only supposed to split the outer portion of the square and leave the inner shape intact. Yes, Yes, exactly. So you'll see that the resulting, right? So you really only split the shaded portions here. You still keep these inside portions, the unshaded portions. Those are still pieces that you use as well. You can see them here and here, and this one, and I think this one, right? Right. So when it comes to splitting that things up further, you just look at the shaded ones, but you keep these unshaded ones, right? That's why I made a copy of those down here as well. These are all of my components that I have at my disposal. There should be 15 of them. You have to use a minimum 12. Yeah. All right. You guys ready? Let's surface these bad boys. So I'm in perspective view. Actually, I'm showing all of them at the same time. But in perspective viewport, I don't know if you noticed this, right? You can right click or just click on the little arrow next to each viewport label and you get another menu, okay? And so some of these are probably made, or some of these are on wireframe mode and some of these are maybe on shaded mode, okay? So in perspective view, I'm gonna turn mine to shaded mode. Okay, I'm just looking at the viewport label where it says perspective versus top or front or right. And then in the resulting menu, I'm gonna select shaded, okay? Okay, so what happens is when I start having surfaces or other kinds of surface geometry in my model, it'll actually be shaded. So I'll actually be able to see it. Okay, so with that said, I want to surface these things. I'm going to go into perspective view. I just double clicked on that viewport label to maximize just the perspective viewport for the time being. And I'm going to bring up a couple of things, right? There's several different ways you can how do you say? You can surface these. Probably the quickest way is to use the extrude command, okay? I'm gonna type in extrude and just watch. So it's gonna say extrude curve, and it's gonna say select this curve to extrude. And I'm going to select, let's say this one, okay? I'm gonna select it and right click to enter when I'm done, okay? And then it's going to pick a direction. By default, I think it's going to be the z-axis since these are drawn on the xy plane. And I have a number of parameters here I can adjust, including it's asking me what the extrusion distance is. So I can just sort of visually move my cursor and click where I want it, or I can type in a distance, like let's say 1 foot, and that's the actual distance I want you guys to use in this case. Okay, but there are a couple of things here. You can if both sides are selected, then they'll extrude in both directions. I just want to do it in one side. So I'm going to click on this. See how I'm clicking on these options in the command line? And they actually look like hyperlinks. When I roll over them, they sort of recolor to blue, right? Solid, yes. If solid is set to no, then I'm just going to extrude the sides and I'll be able to see inside, right? Okay, I'll just go back to extrude. So I'm going to toggle solid to yes. Okay. And extrusion distance, I'm just going to type in 1 and tick mark for foot, and it's going to extrude 1 foot. Right now I have a solid shape. Right. Okay. So now it actually looks like, it could be hypothetical wall, floor, ceiling, something with a little bit of mass to it. Okay. Now, I don't have to do this one at a time. I can do this all at the same time, which is kind of handy. So I can say extrude, and I can select all the curves I want to extrude at once. I'll drag from left to right. There we go, and make sure I select everything. Look for that highlighted color to make sure I have selected everything. I'm going to make sure solid is set to yes. Both sides are set to no. And I'm going to move it so it's going to extrude upwards. I'm going to type in the distance 1 and hash, or the little tick mark for feet, and hit enter, and now everything's extruded all at once, okay? So now I have 3-dimensional surface-based components to move around, to manipulate. So what happens when you explode a solid? Great question, Isaac. What happens when you explode it? Okay, right now this is a set of surfaces that are joined together into one closed polysurface, okay? And so if I explode it, then I get all of this individual edges and sides become their own faces, their own surfaces. Okay, and if I have a bunch of surfaces and they all go together like this, I can select them and join them back together into a solid. So the join and solids work just the same way for surfaces. Sorry, the join and explode work the same way for surfaces and solids as they do for curves and polylines, lines and polylines. Yeah, isn't that cool? And same with the trim and split. Same trim and split tool works for curves and lines. Same, it works for surfaces and polysurfaces and solids and things like that. Okay, you don't have to worry about that too much at the moment. Okay, to get to one of the questions before, I do need to make a 60-foot by 60-foot cube. Okay. So there's a number of different ways you can do this, but there is a cube tool, right? So I can just make like a closed polysurface box. Let's just look at that. I mean, you can see the icon right here. It's like the first one. So the first corner of the base. I can click anywhere to start that. You know, again, it's just asking for a point. So I can click anywhere. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually manually enter in 0, 0, 0, and actually make the first corner of our base the 0, 0, 0 point, our world coordinate axis in our Cartesian coordinate system. So, okay. And when I hit enter, it goes, oh, okay, you mean that point right there, right? And so, okay, so that means the other corner of the base, I can actually type in a dimension like 60, 60, 0. So I can give it a very precise point in space. Make sure I actually have the right things. There we go, 60, 0, 60, 0. So an x coordinate, a y coordinate, and a z coordinate. Okay, and then last, the height, which I can type in 60 feet, right? And now I've very precisely modeled a cube, which I think is helpful. And this cube is opaque, which is kind of annoying. I'm actually going to go back to my viewport label, perspective. Instead of using shaded, I'm going to go with ghosted or maybe even X-ray. And that way I can sort of see through things. And so things are translucent. It makes it easier to compose things in space. Okay. Again, I'm throwing a lot at you guys in a quick amount of time. All right, so I'm going to move this off because it's actually overlapping with my line work, but I just wanted to make sure you saw that, right? So when you need a point, you can actually just click on your screen, but if you want to be very precise, you can actually type in X, Y, and Z coordinates to define a point when it asks you for one in the command line. Okay, so I moved that over, and now it's all about moving, rotating, etc., right? So all of those geometric transformation tools, most of them anyway, are right here. There's a move icon, and if I click and hold, then it brings out a set of transform tools. So there's things like move, soft edit, copy, rotate 3D, scale 3D, 2D, 1D, mirror. There's several type ways you can mirror or reorient objects, do box edits, taper, twist, all these sort of things. Like it's ridiculous how many things there are. But we're just going to talk about move, rotate, copy, those sorts of things. So not a surprise, you can type in copy. You can type in rotate, and rotate will come up. You can type in move, and I think that those are usually some of the more helpful commands. And so I don't know. I'm just going to I'm spitballing here. I'm going to go back and forth though between my perspective view, my top view, and my front view and right view. And that's really important because I'm going to have to start rotating some of these in space. And the easiest way to turn some of these vertical is to rotate them in either front or right view, right? Okay. So for instance, let's say I want to turn this one vertically. I'm going to have my ortho on. I'm going to use rotate. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to type in an angle, like 90 degrees, and then it's going to rotate 90 degrees in front view, right? So now it's a vertical thing. Now I might need to also rotate it 90 degrees in plan view, right? But eventually I'm going to move and arrange 12 of these inside of this box. And to do that, I should probably make sure I'm in the orthogonal view. There we go. Okay. In order to begin to compose these things, and to keep in mind that the instructions, the parameters, are all about rotating and putting things together in perpendicular to each other, 90 degree increments. Okay. So no weird angles, and that'll help you out, I think, as well. Also, remember, let's say I want to take this piece and move it in there. I can move, and I can use these snaps. So let's say snap to endpoint, let's say I want to make these actually line up and be flush in some way. Let me just zoom in a little further. You know, I'm going to tuck this in. Eek. Okay, turn off my ortho for a second. And I'm not sure why this is not snapping. Of course. Snaps there. Why is it not snapping to the inside here? This always happens when I do this in front of people. It always works fine, except when I'm trying to show somebody how to do it. You just try that again. How strange. Huh. Yeah, I'm toggling these on and off, it's still not working. That's weird. Now you're like, holy crap. How am I going to do this if Vermilion can't get it to work? No. So on and on and on. Okay, I'm not sure why it shouldn't be though. I see your question, Isaac, and that's why I hid the solid. You know, because it's like, why is this not? I'm not sure why it didn't. Why it didn't. Why it wouldn't snap? It's really weird. It should snap. Okay, you can always turn this on or off, and that brings up the last thing I'm going to talk about in the yeah, OSnap. Yeah, that's already toggled on. Yeah, snap, grid snap does something different, but OSnap you want. Yeah. But last thing I want to talk about is the layers. Okay, so over here on the right-hand side, if you're opening up Rhino for the first time, there might be this help thing where you select a tool or you select something and it gives you some tips. But there should be multiple tabs here. One of them is properties and one of them is layers. Layers are really helpful. What they begin to do is you think about this as sort of, you know, pieces of trace paper that can be layered up on top of each other. You can put things on different layers and then turn the layers on and off. For instance, I could put this on its own layer, the 60 by 60 volume, and then turn it on and off when I need to look at it or get it out of the way. Okay, so I can create a new layer. Let's call this, I'll name this components. You click on this, you can rename it. I'll make this one volume and try to actually spell it correctly. There we are. And then I'll select this this volume that I created. I'll go to its properties and I'll tell it which layer to put it on. So I'll put it on the volume layer. Now I can turn that volume layer on and off as I need it. Okay. So layer management has something to do with this. And I have more layers than you probably have at the moment because I use this as a demonstration file to generate the diagrams for you guys earlier, right? With all the hatching and dimensions and things like that. Okay. Okay. It's about composing these now into space. And I gave you some, the reason I wanted to give you some examples here is to say, you know, there's no right or wrong way to do this, right? But, you know, here are some examples from the past that were particularly successful. And then here's what you can ask yourself when it comes to the rubric, right? You know, do I have like an ugly side? If so, I need to start to change that up in order to make it less, you know, boring, plain, or ugly, right? You know, so it should have some variety and interest for the, like say how the planes are sort of composed and the resulting volumes from any angle, okay? Those are the most successful ones, okay? In fact, it'll be interesting then to sort of figure out once we turn this into a building, you know, which part is the bottom, which one's the top. But we'll get to that later. I don't want you to think about that now. I want you to make a really interesting conceptual model here, okay? Just simply composing the planar the parts, following the parameters, okay? All right. So we have obviously a lot of time. And I'm done with the demonstration. I'm done with the lecture, and we're done talking about the syllabus. So we can get out of here early, but we have a little bit of time if you have any questions, particularly if you've been working on this at your desktop, and you just have a quick question or two. You're like, hey, wait, what did you do here? But that said, we can get out of here early. So I'll take the next 5 minutes or so to ask any questions you need. If you need to peel off, that's fine. Class is dismissed, but I'm here for the next 5-10 minutes with office hours or however long it's needed, really, to help you out with any questions you have. Remember, we're not meeting tomorrow, but then we'll meet back on Thursday to go over any troubleshooting and then to start talking about the next steps. Okay. And like I said, once I conclude the Zoom meeting, the video it'll have to process and post-process. Then what I can do is I'll post that onto the YouTube and get the link up for you guys, okay, for the demonstration. Once the model is complete, how do you rotate it so you see all the different sides? No. Thanks, Windows. No, I don't want to restart right now. You can just use your right mouse button in perspective and tumble around, okay. The other thing I'm not showing yet, but in Thursday I can show, is how to create the isometric drawing. Right now we're in perspective view, and so I can show you how to do the isometric and make a 2D drawing of it. Okay, like I'll wait till Thursday to do that. That'll be a separate demonstration, and it's a quick one, but it's something that you can do over the weekend once you fine tune things. Okay, what is the end product? This project will have the foundation for. I'm asking on how this initial design might affect the following projects. So this will be a piece of architecture that you're composing. Okay, but it won't be a traditional one, right, where you fall into all the traps of making floors or making a floor plan and then extruding it up like a layer cake and then just punching a few windows and doors in. So this is pretty interesting. What are the imagined edges and what are the defined planes? Yeah. So then we'll bring this into Rhino. You'll start to put some details into it. Then we'll bring it back out into Rhino. We'll take it into Revit, add some details to it. Then we'll bring it back to Rhino. We'll start cutting it with clipping planes, do a section perspective, start extracting plans and sections. We'll take those into Illustrator and begin to talk about line weights and drawing conventions. And then we'll do some perspectives and renderings and bring those into Photoshop and bling them out, right? So really, this is like this is square one. You're creating a piece of architecture here, interestingly enough, okay? But don't think of it as a traditional building. Don't think of this as like your house. Think about it in terms of the abstractness that you see here, right? Of a composition of planes and a set of spaces that have variable volumetric qualities that flow into one another, okay? What are the imagined edges, right? So we're talking about the 60 by 60 by 60 cube that we drew, like this sort of envelope, right, that has edges. So you need to be able to define and have something touching one of these edges, at least 3 of these edges in some place, right? Then you turn this off. This is just a guide to sort of make sure you're not going outside of 60 by 60 by 60, and that you at least touch 1 or 2 or 3 of those edges, I believe, in some way, shape, or form. Okay. But these are the planar components that you're using, the things that you drew and split and then surfaced. Okay. So again, follow the steps, right? Start with rectangles or squares. You start to draw the template. Then you start to split portions of the template. You have these components, turn them into solids, right? And then you arrange them in a way that fits within that 60 by 60 volume, okay? Oh, great. I put it on its own layer, right? I'm taking a shortcut and just hiding it back and forth, but I hate using the hide command. So I put it on its own layer and then I can turn the layer on and off, right? That's what the light bulb on or off does. Okay. So if you want to add a layer, go to the Layers tab and hit New Layer. You can actually select it and type in a new label for the layer so you know what it is. And then you can select this volume that you made, go to its properties, and set a new layer for it. Like you can select any of the layers that you have, including volume. Then when I turn volume on or off, the cube turns on or off. 3 distinct spaces, right? So think about space, rooms, volumes, right? 3 distinct spaces means, again, how do I put this, right? Let me go to one of these examples. Can you see the photograph here? So, right, I've defined a space here, right? It even has like a semblance of an outdoor edge, or sorry, a overhead edge to it. It looks like there's a space inside of here. It looks like there's a volume that connects both this with the bottom one. That could be considered a space. That's a space, right? Some of these spaces have interesting interlocks, right? No, the whole lecture will be going up at yeah. Like I said, what I do is once it's actually uploaded and processed, then what I try to do is I try to spend 5 minutes and go through it and time code the different portions of things. So you go into the comments section of the YouTube video, you can look at it and it'll have like a menu. It'll be like, okay, we start talking about the syllabus at this time code, and you can click on the time code and I'll take you there in the video, right? So things about the syllabus, and then the project brief, and then the, talking about setting the units, and then going to the options, and then, setting your ortho and all that stuff, right? I try to do that stuff. Class time, we don't have class tomorrow. Remember, we're not meeting tomorrow. Thursday, then, you're supposed to come with all questions and challenges that you've had, okay? The first part of Thursday, we will troubleshoot, right? Again, your reference is this module 1 page, right? This tells you everything you need to know, including what we're doing day to day for the next week, okay? Got it, awesome, Juan. All right, with that said, I think people are starting to peel off, and so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And like I said, you guys can leave if you want. Class is dismissed. But again, I'm just sort of sticking around and trying to answer questions. Are you available for questions through email? Yes and no. I'm going to be pretty busy tomorrow, but I'll try my best. But again, if you're at like a real sticking point and you're like, hey, for some reason I can't figure this out and I can't move on until I figured it out, then email me. But if it's one of those things like, hey, I'm just trying to I wanted to rotate this whole thing around 180 degrees. It wasn't pressing, but then come armed with that question on Thursday morning when we meet, okay? And for the most part, we'll meet every day, but Wednesday is just a special. Tomorrow's special, okay? You need some time to work on this and struggle with it, and then will all this be the same if we're using Rhino on Mac, or do we need a PC for this class? I would recommend running Windows on your Mac for Revit and for the Windows version of Rhino if you haven't bought the Mac version yet. I don't like the Mac version of Rhino. The interface is lame, but you can use, I'm running a Mac. I have a MacBook Pro, and I'm running Windows 10 and whatever the latest Mac OS is at the same time. And I like to run the Adobe stuff on the Mac OS, but Revit only runs on Windows. So if you have the Mac version loaded of Rhino, then you can, yeah, I think I put that on there, but you just need to, maybe I didn't. You just need to go to IT and see if you can get a version of Windows, and you can either have your system dual boot, or you can just get parallels and you can run the two at the same time. I'll try to find some information on that, but it's not, I think there should be, have you guys gotten like the laptop requirements from the School of Architecture? Because that should have that on there. But if not, I'll dig that out and try to link to it as well. Thanks, Cameron. But you can always use your preference on how do you, yeah, gaming laptops work amazing well. Anything with a good graphics card, a good video card. So yeah, those things are made for it. I actually have no complaints with my MacBook Pro. It's a higher end one. Those get pretty pricey for the amount of computer you get. So if you're looking at buying, and you're looking for really getting a lot of processing power and then graphics card, you're probably gonna go the PC route. Where exactly will it be recorded? What do you mean? You guys can mute your mic if you want to just ask me things, or unmute yourself. What do you mean? Where exactly will it be recorded, Maria, or Miriam, or Maria?
Where we will be able to see again this recording.
Yeah, so I have to end the Zoom meeting in order for it to start processing the video. Once that happens and it's processed, I'll actually upload it to YouTube, and I'll post a link to YouTube. So again, you always go to this modules page. We're on the module 1, right? So where it says Tuesday, right? And it says, okay, the lecture recording will be uploaded. Once this is finally uploaded and processed, then I'll change the sentence to, you can find the lecture here on YouTube with a link. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's the whole idea, right? When we're doing project one, you just come to the module project one page. It's all there, okay? That's meant to be helpful. Same with submitting the assignment at the end. I'll try to put the link down here as well as making sure that the assignments are showing up for you guys. I don't know why that's not working, but I'm not exactly a Canvas expert. It's not that it's really complicated, but sometimes it seems like you have to just sort of like try to trick it into doing the thing you want to do instead of just making it straightforward. I don't know. Okay. All right. Well, class dismissed, and I'll see you on Thursday. If you have something really pressing, you just need like a quick question answered, then yes, absolutely email me. Okay. I get hundreds of emails a day, and they all want something from me, so don't be surprised if there's a lag. I try to be timely with these things, but there's just, I mean, at this point, I've never been had such a busy summer, which is weird, but it is. Okay, so, but I'll try my best. All right. And I hope this is a fun class. You know, I haven't taught this class in a long time. I teach the advanced digital media course, and the students in there usually have a great time. And, anyway, I'll see you on Thursday.